What's the first screenplay you ever wrote?
It was so funny that I wrote it. In retrospect, I'd only been in LA for like 3 months, and I wrote this thing called Vile City.
Vile City.
It's called Vile City, and Vile City was about 2 guys from Arizona who get in their car and they move to Vile City, which was a fictional place where the sun always shines,
right.
and it was by the ocean, and it was peopled with all the people that are out. It was so weird. It was like, I should have been here for like 25 years to write this. Yeah, I had no opinions on, to me, LA was the greatest thing in the world when I first got here, because
sure.
I was like, coming from freezing cold Boston, and
right.
Everything was pretty, and everybody was pretty, and it was warm all the time, and yet it was this, it was like Bruce Wagner all of a sudden.
Right.
It was so random.
Do you think you hit on an unconscious level? You had
so.
You had an idea of what Hollywood would be like?
I guess I must have. It's so weird, but it was called Vile City.
And whatever happened with that?
Nothing, deservedly. It's in a trunk somewhere.
Do you think you have to write a lot of bad screenplays to get to the first good one?
Absolutely. Again, I go back and there's flashes of like the stuff that I'm so proud of, and those will be cannibalized.
What's the best thing you've ever written, produced or not produced, that you really feel is, God, this is the best thing?
I think the best script I've ever written was one called Johnny Diamond that I wrote with William Goldman's sort of tutelage, and I wrote it for Ron Howard to direct, and Matthew McConaughey was going to be the star, and Brian Grazer was going to produce. And it was this amazing idea that they had, and it was the best script ever.
Can you tell us what it's about?
Johnny Diamond was about this private, it took place in 1961 Los Angeles, and it was about this private eye named Johnny Diamond. It was Matthew McConaughey, and Matthew McConaughey had come from Texas and kind of probably, we never say this, probably to be an actor. And he sort of reinvented himself and he became this private eye. And the thing about him was that he was actually the worst private eye in the world. He had no detective skills whatsoever, and he farmed out all of his cases to this hard-bitten alcoholic, like Gene Hackman, older, much older Gene Hackman, Jack Nicholson kind of guy. So this guy would solve the cases, and then Johnny would talk to the press. It was very sort of, LA Confidential is ultimately what killed us. It was sort of that kind of world, very high-key, 77 Sunset Strip kind of thing. Right. What happens is one day Johnny sees this girl at the pumping gas, like Charlize Theron, Uma Thurman. Oh my God, is that you? It turns out they were high school sweethearts. She left town and never came back again. She went to visit an aunt. She never came back again. And this is the first time you've seen her in like 8 years. And she's wearing like the Jackie O hat, and she's very fancy, and she says, I can't see you, but one thing leads to another. They wind up connecting. This is all the first act. They connect, they make love. It's amazing. He's in love with her all over again, and then she vanishes. And so he says, we got to find this girl. And so he says to his Gene Hackman guy, we got to find this girl. He doesn't say, I know her, it's a missing person. So he goes off to find her, and then he comes back and he goes, forget about this case, kid. This case, no good for us. And he's like, you don't understand, we have to, it's a lot of money. And Hackman probably gleaned something in Johnny's eyes. Sure this isn't personal? Yeah. He goes off again, calls him up. He says, Johnny, I found out some stuff. Meet me up on Mulholland. I'll tell you what's going on. He goes up to Mulholland, and Hackman, again, this is like page 40. Hackman has been slit from stem to stern. He's dying. He's dying out. He's just like, stay away from this, stay away from this. And it turns out that basically, and this was Goldman's thing, that was basically sort of the jumping off point that Ron Howard wanted, was he wanted to do this detective who has to sort of become what he's not.
He has to walk the walk.
He's all steak, he's all sizzle, no steak, and he has to walk the way. And he had this idea, and they brought it to Goldman. Goldman didn't want to write it, and there was a list of writers that they wanted to write, and I was on that list. And I was in Cannes for Con Air, because of course, Con Air, we were in competition for Un Certain Regard. Jerry likes to show
the big premiere in Cannes.
The big premiere. Mm-hmm. So we were there, and Goldman was there, and I'd only known him, I'd met him a couple times, but he was my idol. First screenplay I ever read was Marathon Man.
Oh wow, okay.
And he says, God, this is an amazing coincidence. You're here. You're on this list that Brian Grazer just faxed me, and let me pitch you this idea. And I was like, again, I wasn't available. It was like that whole thing. And he walked me around the yard of the Ducap, and he pitched me the story, just like I pitched you. And I was like, you know what? I'm really not that interested. It sounds cool, and I'd love to work with you, and I think Matthew's great, and then he got me the hook. Here's the thing we come to learn. The girl, his ex, basically, Judy Exner, was the girl who was simultaneously having an affair with John F. Kennedy and Sam Giancana, who was the head of the mob in the early 60s. Basically, she was sleeping with the two most powerful men for good and evil in the world. And there's all these rumors that she was actually the mule who was carrying information about the Castro problem.
Wow.
Back and forth in between them. And she was, so basically Goldman's like, you make our girl her, like you fictionalize her, and that's what she is. And she's actually sleeping with JFK Jr. and Sam Giancana. So it's basically, the bottom line is, what's the worst thing you would ever want to find your high school sweetheart doing?
Right.
She's like fucking Jack Kennedy and Sam Giancana. And that to me like was mind blowing.
Right.
And I was like, can we make, because Howard Hughes is a character in this, Sam Giancana is a character in
This
it.
is a real James Ellroy feel too.
Totally, it was completely that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, Jack Kennedy isn't, but a lot of his peeps are. And it was that thing, and I really feel like I completely nailed it. I mean, with Goldman's help, and it was the greatest part for Matthew. I actually had I tend to write a lot on the East Coast, and I was writing this in Boston at my mother's house, because she's in Florida. And Matthew had called, like 2 months earlier, he'd called looking for me, and my mother, of course, saved his message so she could play it for her friends. So it was still on the answering machine. So while I was upstairs, like writing, I would like go downstairs and I would play his message to get his voice in my head, because he's got a very specific way of talking. And it was the greatest part for him, because he and I happen to like Matthew a lot, but this would have, got him nominated. All the parts were great. I just felt like I killed it. And then LA Confidential came out. And Brian Grazer, who's Ron's partner, was never really, it's dark. It's Chinatown, it's all that thing. Right. And what excited Ron about it was, since Chinatown, there had never been a movie like it.
Right.
There just hadn't been like that 61, LA, the whole thing. And then LA Confidential came out. And LA Confidential was awesome. And LA Confidential got nominated for 2 Oscars. And LA Confidential made the best, critics' best for every single critic. And LA Confidential made $40 million at the box office. And at that point, I knew I was dead. And then also Ed TV came out. And so Ed TV was the Ron Howard, Matthew McConaughey
reality show.
Their first marriage.
Yeah.
And it didn't go so well.
Right.
So I think the prospect of that thing,
Was it frustrating to have something that you felt that good about in terms of your own work be affected by things you had no control over?
It was frustrating, but it's also one of those things where not a day goes by. Yes, I lied. Many days go by, but not a month goes by where one of these like young hot directors, say to me, "Man, Johnny Diamond, I love that script. And I don't push it anymore, because I now, you said, do you write in pictures? That's one of the few scripts that I've written that I actually see every frame in my head. And Would
you ever direct it?
Yeah, but I would never direct it as a first film. And basically my whole reason for directing a first film, which is a small one, is so I can direct Johnny Diamond.
Right.
Because I just think it's so castable, and it doesn't have to be made for $80 million, even though it's period, It's all about performance, and it's, obviously production design, but yeah, but I love that one. That's my best.
Do you have a specific example of hitting a roadblock in the writing of a script and how you got around one?
The way I always get around, I've been very blessed. I never suffer from writer's block. I'm up to the opposite. It's the full-on, Wonder Boys monster in a box thing. It's like there's too much.
Okay.
But when I have been blocked, and I don't recommend this at home to the kids at home, but I have a very specific thing that I do when I'm blocked, and thank God it's not often. It's only happened like 4 or 5 times in my life. When I'm at page 65, and I honestly have no idea how to get there. It's not even, it's outlined, but it's not working, or I'm dreading writing. I can't do it, and it's very specific. I cancel all my plans for Friday night. It's always Friday night, and I go to my house, and this is gonna sound so silly, but I've done it 5 times, and I fill up a cooler. One of those igloo coolers like you take to the beach. By the way, my kitchen's not that far from my office. Like I could actually go to the refrigerator, but it's part of the thing. I fill it up with ice and I fill it up with beer. Budweiser cans. And I bring it upstairs and I sit it down next to my desk and I play, usually it's Metallica, really loud. Now with the iPod, you can get actually their entire
giant,
catalog.
right.
I can start with Master of Puppets and go all the way through, and I will drink beer and rewrite what I up to the point. Like so, I'm just like messing around and doing cutting and usually right around midnight, because if I started at like 8, I'm pretty much hammered.
What song usually gets you through?
I haven't eaten. What song? That's a good question. It all depends.
Right. So you're pounding back the beers, and the talk is blasting.
And I'm drunk. I'm no eating. You don't eat.
Right.
And I'm drunk, and I usually finish about 2, 3 in the morning, because once you're drunk, writing drunk is so much fun. That's why you can't do it. And
are there spelling errors like when you wake up?
By the way, so you wake up the next morning, you're a little hungover, and you read it, and honestly, 90% of it is absolute garbage. It's horrible. Well, you thought it was good, but it's literally that 10% has freed me up to get past whatever it was, because who knows why something stops you, and it's just that thing of just being uninhibited. It's all about something. You're doubting yourself.
Right.
If you can't write from that point to that point, you're doubting your ability to actually somehow span whatever that is, and somehow that fucking Budweiser makes you do it. That's my key to writer's block.
So it's an inhibition thing. The alcohol kind of powers you through the inhibition.
I guess, which is probably why I never have it, because I have so few inhibitions.
Do you feel, if you're looking at yourself critically, do you have a weakness as a screenwriter? Do you think, or at this point, do you pretty much know that you're?
Yeah, I have a lot of weaknesses. I mean, ultimately, my weakness is that I'm a big fan of the show 24, and I love the show. I couldn't write for that show in 100 years, because I can't write. Drop the gun. What does the satellite say?
Right.
And I'm not belittling that at all.
Sure.
Like I can only write the flowery shit that I write, and it's really a problem. I mean, I just dealt with it on this pilot that I just did for ABC. It's like, those were our notes. Like, who talks like this?
Right.
And I just can't. It really bores me not to watch it, but to write it. Like, I just can't write simple stuff. And it's the. And Aaron Sorkin can get away with it because he's writing. First of all, he's better than me, but also he's writing smarter people. They work at the White House, or they work for Saturday Night Live, or they work on Sports Center.
So even when they say get the facts, you feel like it's something heady.
Exactly. I'm putting that kind of speech into people, people's mouths who work at the dry cleaner.
So to improve in that area, you just now limit your work to really what you feel good about doing and what's comfortable for you, and not the stuff that you just don't enjoy.
No, I haven't improved in that area.
But you still do stuff that
I just do it, and people either they want it or they accept it or they won't. And I also tend to fall in love with like the first draft.
Right. Right.
Like I just like, oh, this is great. This is great. Why don't you like this?
Then your few friends and family kind of disabuse you of that.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you find inspiration for the stuff you write?
Music is a tremendous. Every script has bands that I associate with it, songs that I associate with it, whether I put them in or not. It really is. I mean, there isn't one that doesn't have its own sort of musical palette. And I find tremendous inspiration from my friends back home, the guys I grew up with, the Beautiful Girls guys.
Right. What's the single best piece of advice or insight you've picked up or gleaned over the years?
I don't know if this qualifies as advice, because he didn't say it to me, but it was always the one thing that I thought was the most sort of the greatest distillation of what we go through. It was Steven Soderbergh quote that I read somewhere. Because all you hear about, every single person that comes here to try to do this thing, you hear about, it's all about luck. And you heard it, my uncle and your uncle and everybody, it's luck, it's luck. Who you know in luck, they always say. And who you know is just bullshit. But they always say it's luck. And Soderbergh said that luck equals talent plus perseverance. And I really believe that to be true, because I know a lot of people that came when I arrived, and they were really, really good writers. And at a certain point, they just said, I can't do this anymore. I want a life, and I want to get married, and I want to have children, and I'm going back home. And they gave it up. And then I knew a lot of lesser talents that just kept at it and kept at it and kept at it. And now they're writing for According to Jim. No, I'm kidding, I'm sorry. But you know, and I think that that's really true. I think you have to have something to bring to the party, but you also have to be willing to really sort of, you know, leave it all on the court and like just keep at it and keep at it, because it's not going to come. It's not necessarily, there is no rule, and that's the frustrating thing about this whole thing, because invariably people ask, you know, what do I do to become a screenwriter? What do I do to become a successful screenwriter? And like, it's like nothing else there is. I mean, the pat answer is write a good script, which is really true because they're dying for them, and it's like, you know, it's like whenever a new one comes across the,
you open the page with the hope and the anticipation.
We all heard about Usual Suspects. We all heard about Sixth Sense. Like we all, you know, it reached, you know, Bin Laden in his cave heard about it. You know, I mean, it reaches all corners of the. Right. But I think that, you know, the best piece of advice that I can give is honestly, keep writing. Just write all the time and really appreciate. I'm just assuming, and maybe this is bad on my part, that most of the people that are going to be watching this are younger. And that is the greatest virtue in the world, is your youth and your energy, because when I was writing those first 10 screenplays, I was 22 years old, I didn't have a nickel. I used to, this is really dating myself, but they were these things, they were called typewriters, and they used to exist way back. And I used to, because I shared a room, and I used to, with my electric typewriter on my lap, because we didn't even have a table.
Wow.
And I used to put towels in between because it was hot, so it would heat up my thing, and I'd literally be sweating, and I would, and in those days, to rewrite a script, you'd have to start all over from the beginning. You couldn't, you know, and I was just working a job, going to school, and just writing. Now, you just don't do that now, and it's not because I'm rich and successful, it's just because I'm exhausted, I'm old.
Right.
And use that youth, use that you have that, because that's a gift, and it's a gift that ain't gonna be there forever.
Great advice. What's next for you? What's upcoming?
I am doing, I wrote this little movie that I'm trying to direct. I'm sure we'll do the 50th anniversary of these interviews, and I'll be like, I'm doing this little movie that you know, I'm definitely one of those guys where it seems like a tremendous amount of work, but as long as I'm like, hey, I'm trying to get a movie off the ground, which I've been doing that, and I think it looks like it. I just did this pilot for ABC, which by the time this comes out, you'll all be watching, or you'll never have heard of.
Gotcha.
So, and that's going to really decide what I'm doing the next. And then just writing a movie for Warner Brothers and a movie for you and a few other things here and there. But just, you know, just doing the job.
Very cool. Well, we want to thank today's subject, Scott Rosenberg, for being with us. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Mike.
Awesome conversation. We want to thank you for watching as well. Please remember to check out the other great interviews in our series with industry pros. And remember, it all starts with you. The next Written By credit could be yours. I'm Mike DeLuca.